Hi guys, this video is focused on the idea of replacement in Jiu Jitsu. It's going to be a little bit on the longer end because the topic's a little bit more in depth, but what the idea of replacement is, it means that you're going to always want to keep a connection with your opponent, whether you're on offense or whether you're on defense, and you want to always be replacing that connection. So what that means is, let's say that you have your opponent in side control and you're beginning to move from standard side control into north-south. As you start to shift your body around, you're going to be replacing where you had that hand grip is going to move to another area of your opponent's body. The moment that that hand grip that you had, let's say, on their hips moves to their shoulder or to their neck, you have to be replacing that with something else, whether it's a knee in that position that it was before, or whether it's another grip, or whether it's shoulder pressure or some sort of other pressure. There always has to be replacement occurring. There always has to be pressure and connection that's occurring, especially when you're on offense. When you're on defense, the idea of replacement, it's also working the same. You're creating frames, you're creating space, but every time that you remove, let's say, your foot from your opponent's hip to try to hip escape on the ground or to try to create space, there should be something else that's filling that void. There should be a hand coming up, a movement that's occurring, a scramble that's occurring, you're switching your hips into the other direction. It's the idea of replacement. You always want to be replacing one limb for another limb or one pressure for another type of pressure. The sooner that you're able to sort of grasp this idea and put this idea into place, you're going to see your jiu-jitsu grow by leaps and bounds. You're going to, see how you always have connection, you always have pressure, and for some reason, the more you start to do this, you're going to start to see submissions open up, especially from the top side position when you have side control on your opponent. You're going to start to see, with the idea of replacement, as you start to move around their body and as you start to move one limb for another, you're going to start to see arm triangles appear. You're going to start to see Ezekiel chokes appear. You're going to start to see the back appear, pathways to the back. You're going to start to see guillotine chokes appear with replacement. Replacement is the key. If you want to get really good at submissions, you've got to get good at replacing and keeping connection with your opponent's body. If you want to get good at escaping bad positions, it's the same thing. It's just changing a little bit. You're creating space, and when you create space by pushing off your opponent, you're going to replace that space with something else, whether it's a hip movement outwards, whether it's a hip movement inwards, whether it's, hey, you had your foot on his hip, you then moved away, and you got an underhook in. The idea of replacement. Very important, something that at the higher belts you really start to grasp how important that idea is, especially when opponents are physically bigger than you and they're able to be more explosive and use more physicality. The idea of replacement then becomes paramount. You have to always have connection on your opponent, always be controlling them in order to advance or to escape the position. So again, idea of replacement, guys, both on offense and on defense. You're either moving one limb for another, or you're exchanging one force of pressure for another force of pressure, or one hip movement for another hip movement. But we've always got something there. We don't just ever want to be, oh, I moved my arm here and that's it. Because what's going to happen is, you see it at the lower belt levels a lot, you move your arm here and then your opponent, boom, they escape and they're right on your back and you're like, what happened? The idea of replacement, you missed it. And the more you become aware of that you always have to replace something, the better off you're going to be. Till next time, guys.